He was told to leave for loitering. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out the deed to the entire mall. The security guard laughed when he said it. "This ain't your kind of place, old man." But within 5 minutes, 3 managers were fired. And the man in the hoodie? He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. Because when you own the ground they think you don't belong on, you don't need permission to stand still. But to understand why a man stayed silent when everyone around him raised their voice, you have to go back. Back to the morning he returned to the place that once threw him out. A place he used to mop. A place he now owned, without anyone knowing it. The mall looked smaller than he remembered. Not physically. The structure hadn't changed much since 1994, but the weight of the place felt lighter. The paint on the east entrance was peeling. A few pigeons fluttered across the cracked skylight. One of the neon letters above the main sign, the R in Ridgeview Center, had gone dark. Darius Mallory stood on the sidewalk in a black hoodie and worn jeans. He wasn't trying to blend in. He wasn't trying to stand out either. He was just there. He adjusted the strap of his old canvas bag and took a breath. It smelled like popcorn grease and faint cleaning fluid. That scent hadn't changed in 30 years. He walked through the glass doors like a customer, like a stranger, like someone passing through. Nobody noticed him, at least not yet. The morning crowd was thin, mall walkers in sweats, a mom wrangling 2 toddlers, and a couple of teenagers pretending not to shoplift. Darius moved with a quiet rhythm, his steps slow but intentional. His eyes scanned each storefront like they held a story. Because for him, they did. The smoothie stand near the food court. That used to be his first job. $3.75 an hour, and all the banana peels he could clean. The janitor's closet behind the arcade. He once slept there when the bus stopped running after his night shift. He passed a security kiosk with a digital display looping through shop-safe reminders. 2 guards leaned on the counter, laughing at a phone screen. They didn't look up. Not yet. Darius kept walking. There was no ceremony to his return, no red carpet, no handshake, just the hum of escalators and the same flickering light over the empty jewelry store. He turned down the south wing. That wing used to be packed. Foot Locker, Payless, Radio Shack. Now? Empty glass boxes with old adhesive outlines of for lease signs. He stopped in front of a window, his reflection staring back through the dusty glass. A man in a hoodie. Some would see a loiterer, a drifter, maybe even a problem. But what stood behind those eyes was legacy, was history, was ownership. He reached into his bag, pulled out a folded sheet, creased, worn, and heavy with ink. The official purchase agreement, signed, stamped, finalized. Darius looked at it for just a second, then slid it back into the bag. Today wasn't about proving anything. It was about standing in a place that once told him he'd never belong, and knowing, in silence, that he did. He stepped back from the window, and that's when one of the guards finally noticed him. The man pointed, whispered something to his partner, and just like that, the story began. He parked far from the entrance, not out of caution, but habit. The same habit he'd kept since his early 20s, back when he drove a rusted '86 Corolla and parking far meant no one could see the dents. Now he pulled up in a black Lincoln Continental. Clean, quiet, unremarkable. Just how he liked it. Darius sat for a moment before stepping out, hands on the wheel, eyes scanning the mall from a distance. There were no banners welcoming him, no suits waiting at the curb, just sun-hitting pavement. And a man who once mopped this very floor, now returning as the one who owned it. He stepped out, straightened his hoodie, and slung the canvas bag over his shoulder. The morning heat rose off the asphalt, and his boots clicked soft against the sidewalk. He walked past the same bike rack he once chained his first Schwinn to, the same benches where he ate peanut butter sandwiches during his 15-minute break, the same faded mural on the south wall that used to inspire him as a kid, a cartoon skyline painted by school children that now flaked and curled under the sun. Back then, Darius never thought he'd leave this place, not because he loved it, but because when you're poor, familiar becomes sacred. Predictability feels like peace. But the world had other plans. He passed a mother holding a toddler. She smiled politely. He nodded once, gently. Neither of them knew he paid for the new daycare that just opened above the food court. That was the point. He didn't do any of it for the spotlight. He just wanted the kind of justice you can't shout into being. The kind you build. The kind you walk into quietly. He made his way through the East Wing. A new jewelry kiosk had popped up. Cheap gold, flashy lights. Same hustle, different decade. He looked up at the atrium. That skylight still leaked when it rained. He remembered slipping on that wet tile as a janitor and being laughed at by his supervisor. That same tile still hadn't been fixed. He kept walking. A few store owners glanced up as he passed. Most just looked past him. One young employee, maybe 17, looked him up and down like he was lost. Darius just smiled softly and kept moving. He made no announcements. He handed out no business cards. He was just a man walking his own halls. His feet carried him to the center court, the heart of the mall. The fountain no longer worked. The water had been drained years ago. A cracked plaque near the base still read, "Dedicated to Mr. Gerald Kane." 1983, Darius ran his fingers along the stone. Gerald Kane. The man who fired him without warning after someone claimed he was lingering too long in front of a clothing store. That moment changed everything, and yet Darius didn't feel anger now, just distance. He sat down on the same marble ledge where he used to eat lunch alone. A few teens laughed loudly near the arcade entrance. One of them pointed toward Darius, another smirked. He didn't flinch. He just looked around, at the worn ceiling tiles, the vending machines that still barely worked, the echoes of 100 conversations long since faded. And he smiled, just a little. This was his now, and nobody knew. But the mall remembered, every crack, every stain, every unspoken insult left behind in the walls. And as Darius walked deeper into its forgotten corridors, the past began to follow. The floor tiles in the south wing had changed color, not from design, from years of wear. Footsteps had carved invisible trails through the marble, same way time carves quiet trails through men. Darius walked those paths slowly, his steps soft, as if trying not to wake something buried beneath the linoleum. He passed a row of shuttered stores, faded lettering on the glass, dust tracing the outlines of old sale stickers. Shoe Carnival, Gadget Zone, books and things. Gone now, all of it. And yet, he could still hear the echoes, the voice of his old manager barking about mop speed, the overhead music that never quite matched the season, the hum of the floor buffer at 9 p.m., right as the mall lights dimmed. He turned a corner and stopped. There it was, the janitor's closet, still marked maintenance only, though the paint had peeled around the letters. He reached for the knob. It stuck a little. Always had. The door creaked open, and the musty smell hit him like a memory. Bleach, metal shelves, that buzzing fluorescent light that flickered and made his head throb. Inside, everything was smaller than he remembered. The stool where he used to sit during lunch, the clipboard on the hook, a dented old mop bucket that somehow hadn't moved. He stepped in slowly and closed the door behind him, and for a moment, it was like no time had passed, like he was 19 again, broke, invisible, trying to prove he was more than what the world kept insisting he was. This was the room where he first swore to himself, "I will not die in this closet." It wasn't dramatic. There were no witnesses, just a whisper in the dark. But that whisper carried him through more than he could count. He touched the wall, a crack running through the concrete like a scar. That scar had been there when he started. Still was. Some wounds never fade. They just become part of the structure. He stepped back out and closed the door gently. No need to disturb the ghost. He made his way toward the food court. The smell of old fryer grease still lingered. The booths were newer, but the bones of the space were the same. Darius stopped in front of a corner table. That table, he'd eaten his first paycheck dinner there. 2 hot dogs and a root beer. Alone. He looked up at the neon sign above the counter. Burgers galore. Different name. Same spot. A teenager behind the register barely glanced at him. "You lost or something, sir?" Darius just smiled. "Nah, I used to work here." The teen shrugged and turned away. And that was fine. Some places forget you. Some people never knew you. But the walls, they remember. He looked around at the tiled ceiling, the benches, the vending machine that never quite worked. And he saw it all. The fight that broke out in 1992. The day the power went out, and he stayed 2 hours late to clean melted ice cream. The old lady who used to tip him $5 every Friday just for sweeping near her shoes. Those weren't memories. They were layers, brick by brick, built into him. And now, he owned it. All of it. But still, he didn't tell anyone. Not yet. He just kept walking, past the food court, past the atrium toward the west corridor. And that's when he saw it. 2 security guards, one pointing, the other already moving. They hadn't recognized him, but they had made up their minds. And just like that, the past caught up. Not in memory, but in motion. 2 men in uniform, walking toward a man they didn't understand, but they were about to. They walked like they had somewhere to be, but their eyes told the real story. Not urgency, not protocol, control. One was younger, maybe mid-20s, slim build, khaki vest, buzz cut, sunglasses propped on his head. The kind of posture that came from watching too many cop shows. The other, older, broader, arms crossed as he walked. Thick boots, folded notepad in one hand. Eyes sharp, like he enjoyed being suspicious. Darius didn't move. He saw them before they spoke. He'd seen their kind before too. Not the men, but the energy. The way some people walk when they think they own the rules. The younger one got there first. "Sir, can I help you?" Darius turned, calm, voice steady, number just walking. The guard nodded, exaggerated. "Right. Yeah, it's just, we've had reports. You've been lingering." "Lingering." "Yes, sir. Loitering. Just making sure you're not causing any issues." Darius looked around. The corridor was nearly empty. No crowd. No one watching. Just an old man in a hoodie and 2 guards trying to feel important. He held their gaze. I used to mop these floors. The older guard snorted. That's so? Well, you're not mopping today, are you? The younger one shifted uncomfortably. He didn't expect the man in the hoodie to speak so clearly, so calmly, so deliberately. We're going to need you to exit the property, sir. Darius blinked once. You sure about that? The older guard stepped forward now. Look, we don't want a scene. Just take the escalator down and use the south exit. That's all. You don't know who I am. Don't care, sir. The words landed like gravel. Flat. Intentional. Willed into dismissal. But Darius didn't flinch. I believe in respecting rules, he said softly, when they apply to everyone. The younger guard hesitated. His eyes darted toward the camera above them. It's not personal, sir. It's just policy. Policy doesn't have a voice, Darius replied. People do. There was a pause. Then the older guard leaned in just a hair too close. Let me say it plain. You're making people uncomfortable. We've got a duty to respond. Darius studied him. Not angry, not defiant, just still. Uncomfortable, he echoed. What exactly about me is uncomfortable? The man didn't answer, because the answer wasn't in the hoodie, or the bag, or the slow steps. It was in who they thought he was, and who they couldn't imagine he might be. A few bystanders started to notice. A man sipping coffee slowed down near the storefront. An older woman with a stroller took out her phone. But the guards didn't see them. They were still locked on Darius. The younger one exhaled. Come on, let's just go talk in the office. Darius shook his head slowly. I'm not leaving. Another pause. The tension thickened. The older guard's jaw tensed. He reached for his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 2. Got a 10-6 at the West Wing. Male, approximately 50s, non-compliant. Requesting, stand by for response. Darius didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into his bag. Both guards tensed instantly. Easy! But what came out was a manila folder. He held it up calmly, opened it, revealed the document inside. One page, stamped, signed, official, a deed, ownership papers of the entire mall. The younger guard blinked. What is this? Darius looked him in the eye. It's the reason I'm not leaving. This some kind of prank? Number, it's the title transfer. Filed last week. You... What? I own this mall. A silence fell like a curtain. No noise, no movement. Just air thick with realization. The older guard looked at the document, looked back at Darius. His voice finally unsure. You're Darius Mallory? That's right. And just like that, the roles flipped. But pride doesn't back down easily. And ego, especially when uniformed, doesn't surrender without a fight. Because what came next wasn't about facts. It was about fear. The older guard didn't blink. He stared at the paper like it might catch fire. Then looked up at Darius, jaw locked, arms folded tight across his chest. Doesn't mean you can just walk around wherever you want. The words weren't law. They were defense. A last grip on whatever control he thought he had left. The younger one stepped in. Okay, look, if this is legit, maybe we should call management. I am management, Darius said, calm. I'm more than that. The older guard snorted. You don't look like any mall owner I've met. And there it was, not in what he said, but in how he said it. That quiet, cutting assumption. The same tone Darius had heard at job interviews, bank counters, parking lots, restaurant host stands. He felt it before, and it still hit the same. Not like a punch, more like a push, just hard enough to remind you they still think they're above you. I don't dress for you, Darius replied. I dress for comfort and clarity. The older guard stepped closer, voice lower now, more deliberate. You think this paper makes you better than me? Darius didn't answer. Didn't rise, didn't lean forward. He just stood, completely still. I don't think I'm better, he said. But I am in charge. The moment snapped. Not loud, just tight, like a cable pulled too far. A manager from a nearby clothing store stepped out of her shop, holding a clipboard. She saw the three men, paused, and retreated inside, pretending not to notice. A teenager behind the pretzel stand filmed silently behind the soda machine. People were watching now, not with their eyes, with their instincts. The younger guard, visibly unsettled, shifted weight from foot to foot. Let's just get the mall office involved, okay? They already are, Darius replied. I signed their paychecks last week. That did it. The older guard's face flushed. His voice dropped to a hiss. You walk in here like some kind of king. I walked in like a man, Darius cut in. You're the one treating me like I don't belong. The radio on the guard's hip buzzed. Unit 2, report status. He didn't respond. He was too locked in, too deep, too embarrassed, too cornered. Sir, he said louder now, glancing at the small crowd forming nearby. I'm giving you one last chance. Leave this property before I call the police. Darius sighed, not in frustration, in weariness. He had built his life to avoid moments like this, but somehow they still found him. Do what you have to do, he said. Just know who you're doing it to. And that's when someone spoke. From behind, from the mezzanine above, a voice, calm, clear, steady as concrete. He's not leaving. Heads turned. A woman in a dark blazer stood near the escalator railing. She held a clipboard. Mall administration badge clipped to her belt. That man, she continued, is the new owner of Ridgeview Center. I suggest you lower your voice. The guards froze. The older one opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Darius, looked back up. She walked down the escalator, heels clicking like punctuation. Mr. Mallory, I apologize. We hadn't sent out the official memo yet. Darius nodded. Didn't need one. The security team now stood quiet, small, exposed. Return to your station, the woman said, firm but not unkind. I'll be meeting with both of you shortly. They hesitated. Now. The older guard's lip twitched, but he turned. The younger one followed. And just like that, they were gone. Darius stood alone again, but everything had changed. Not because he said anything, but because he didn't have to. But the confrontation wasn't the end. It was just the spark. Because the deeper Darius walked into the building, the more it walked back into him. And some ghosts don't stay quiet forever. The echoes had started long before the confrontation. They just got louder afterward. Darius walked deeper into the West Wing, where the air felt stiller, older, heavier. Some corners of a place never shake the past. They absorb it, like smoke in old fabric, like sorrow in silence. He passed a boarded-up toy store, one he used to sweep at closing, sweeping fast because the manager hated paying overtime. He could still hear the bristles on linoleum, could still feel the ache in his shoulders from carrying garbage bags twice his size out to the frozen dumpster behind the food court. Back then, the mall was alive. Now it was flickering. He turned into a narrow corridor most shoppers never noticed. No shops, just old signage, exit doors, a vending machine that hadn't worked since 2008. He stopped outside a maintenance door. pressed his palm against it. The paint had changed. The number above it had not. B214. That was his hallway, where he'd scrubbed gum off floors and patched a leak that no one thanked him for. He stepped through. The hallway buzzed with dim, aging lights. As he walked, his memory took over. Flashback. 1993, 17 years old. Khaki shirt, 2 sizes too big. Mop in one hand, disappointment in the other. He was working the night shift alone. Cleaning up spilled soda in front of the theater. 2 teens walked past, white, laughing too loud, one of them bumping him on purpose. "Out of the way, janitor boy!" He said nothing, just bent down, kept scrubbing. A manager saw it happen, didn't say a word, just walked past like it hadn't. That was the night Darius decided he'd never settle for being looked through again. Back in the present, he stopped outside a faded directory. Finger trailing the map, he landed on a square labeled Operations Office. That was where it happened. The firing, no warning. Just a clipboard and a sentence. "We're downsizing." Sorry, D, but it wasn't downsizing. It was because he spoke up when a supervisor shoved another worker and called her ghetto trash. He remembered standing in that office, heart pounding, fist clenched behind his back, knowing if he said one wrong word, he'd lose everything. And he did. Years passed after that. He got jobs, lost some, started fixing vacuums on weekends, started saving, started thinking bigger. But that hallway never left him. It haunted him quietly, not with pain, but with promise. If I ever come back. He didn't finish the sentence then, but today it had finished itself. Because here he stood, not as a janitor, not as a boy, not even as a customer, but as the one who owned the locks on this door. He took a breath, stepped back into the atrium. The same guard who tried to remove him earlier was now posted near the pretzel cart. Eyes down, radio silent. Darius didn't look his way, didn't need to. He'd already made his point. His hands once carried a mop. Now they carried the deed. But what mattered more than either was what he'd built in between. Because Darius Mallory didn't just return, he earned his way back, every floor tile at a time. He didn't become the man with the deed overnight. There were no shortcuts, no mentors handing him blueprints, no silent investors swooping in to save him. There was just grind and grit. After he got fired from Ridgeview in '93, Darius spent 2 weeks sleeping on his cousin's couch. No job, no car. Just a notebook full of ideas and a bitterness he didn't know what to do with. But bitterness can ferment into fuel if you know how to bottle it. He started with vacuums, fixing broken ones for neighbors, buying used models, swapping parts, reselling them on Sundays from the trunk of a borrowed Buick. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. By 1996, he had a rented space in a strip mall. Small sign, smaller budget, but it was his name on the lease. D. Mallory Repair and Supply. The first time he flipped the open sign, he stood there and whispered to no one, "We're open for good." For a while, it was just enough. Then came the fire, an electrical short, one faulty wall heater. He lost everything. No insurance, no backup plan, just ashes and debt. It could have broken him, but it didn't. Because he remembered the closet, the mop, the way they looked at him when they told him to go. And somehow, that memory was heavier than the loss. So he started again. Only this time he didn't open a store. He opened an idea. By 2002, Darius had started buying tools in bulk. selling them to local contractors and maintenance teams. It was boring business, reliable, unsexy, but steady. He learned credit lines, logistics, shipping margins. He watched how commercial leases worked. He learned how to buy tax liens on foreclosed properties. And once he learned that, he never looked back. He bought his first property in 2007, an abandoned barbershop, fixed it up himself, rented it out within 3 months. The second property came a year later, then a third. Each deal got a little bigger, each handshake a little firmer. By 2015, he was sitting at tables where no one called him D. They called him Mr. Mallory. Or better yet, they just listened. He kept his name off the headlines, did business through LLCs, always quiet, always calm, but always moving. And when Ridgeview Mall came up for sale in early spring, he didn't hesitate. He didn't tour the property. He didn't negotiate the price. He just signed the dotted line. Because this wasn't a business acquisition. It was closure. It was the full circle moment he never asked for, but always built toward. Now, as he stood under the skylight of the mall he once mopped, the light hit him differently. Not brighter, just clearer. A boy once tried to survive here. A man came back to own it. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove himself right. But even ownership doesn't protect you from small men with loud voices. And when the right woman recognized the man they tried to erase, everything began to shift. Because the truth was about to go public. She almost didn't recognize him. Almost. But as Darius passed the cosmetics kiosk, he paused, and she caught a glimpse of his profile. The way he held his shoulders, the way he walked, slow but certain. Like a man measuring the ground beneath his feet, and then she knew. Darius? He turned, surprised, then softened. Brenda. She stepped out from behind the glass display, lipstick in one hand, disbelief in the other. My God, it is you. They hadn't seen each other in 28 years. But in that moment, it felt like yesterday. Brenda had been working that same kiosk when Darius was on janitor crew. Back when they'd eat lunch on crates in the service hallway and swap stories about how they were going to make it out. She never left. He did. And now he was back. Different, but not. What are you doing here? She asked, still stunned. Walkin'? Since when does a man walk through his own mall like he's not in charge? Darius smiled. Since I didn't come for attention. She stepped closer. You always were too quiet. But damn if you didn't keep your word. I said I'd come back. He nodded. You didn't say you'd buy the place. She laughed then. One of those deep, full laughs that pulls a crowd. A few customers turned their heads, and suddenly whispers started. Wait, what did she say? Who is that guy? Brenda saw the moment brewing. She didn't let it pass. Y'all listen up, she said, turning to two younger employees nearby. You're looking at the new man in charge. This whole building, he owns it now. The words hung in the air, like dust catching sunlight. The girl at the nail bar blinked. The smoothie guy dropped his straw. Even the manager at Shoe Central peeked around the corner. Darius didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Brenda kept talking. They tried to kick him out earlier. Had no idea who he was. Can you believe that? Told him to stop loitering when he signs our paychecks now. The moment shifted. The mall, that had once ignored him, was now turning toward him, not in pity, not in curiosity, in respect. A quiet kind at first, then warmer. The kiosk girl offered him water. The cell phone guy came out with a chair. Sir, do you want to sit? He smiled gently. I've been standing a long time. I'm used to it. Word spread fast. Faster than memos. Faster than press releases. Because this wasn't a headline. It was human. It was dignity returned and witnessed. Some employees whispered to one another. Others stared like they were seeing something impossible. One man leaned against the railing and muttered, "That's the guy they tried to toss?" The other nodded. Didn't even raise his voice. And that made it real. Not just that Darius had come back, but how he did it. Not with noise, not with flash, with presence, with poise, with proof. The moment had shifted quietly. But the internet doesn't do quiet. One video, one headline, and suddenly, the world wanted to know. Who was the man in the hoodie with the keys to the mall? The video was only 38 seconds long. Grainy, shot vertically, shaky hands. But that's all it took. 38 seconds of a man in a hoodie holding up a deed while two security guards stood frozen, and a woman in heels confirmed the truth for everyone to hear. He owns the mall. That's the line that caught fire. Someone posted it to TikTok before their shift ended. Another clipped it for Instagram. Then a teacher shared it on Facebook with the caption, "Dignity. Silent. Powerful." By nightfall, it was everywhere. At first, Darius didn't know. He didn't check social media much. Still had a flip phone in his glove compartment and used a paper planner. But Brenda knew. She called him at 6:43 p.m. "Darius, you need to see what's going on." He walked to her kiosk, and she turned the screen of her tablet toward him. He watched the clip, watched himself. Still, calm, measured, watched the guards, watched the crowd, then watched the views climb. 147,000, 208,000, 367,000. His face was suddenly invisible, and more than that, recognized. The phone calls started that night. Local news, then regional radio, then a podcast host with 3 million followers who said, "This is why we respect quiet power." But Darius said no to all of them, because he hadn't come back to be seen. He'd come back to remember, to honor the kid who once got kicked out the side door for cleaning too slow. The man who promised himself he wouldn't stay small, and maybe, just maybe, to show others that dignity doesn't always wear a suit. By day 3, a journalist showed up in the food court. Polite, curious, carrying 2 coffees and a notepad. "Just 5 minutes of your story, sir?" Darius declined, but he handed the coffee to the teen sweeping the floor nearby. "They need your story more than mine," he said. The kid blinked, didn't understand. Not yet. But one day, maybe. Inside the mall, things changed. The kiosk employees stood straighter. The managers smiled more. Not because they were afraid, but because they were watching. Watching what it looked like when power wasn't loud, but earned. A new sign appeared outside the janitor's closet a week later. White plaque, black letters, in honor of Darius Mallory, who once cleaned these halls and then bought them. He didn't request it, didn't even see it right away. But when he did, he just nodded. No speech, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet look, and the kind of smile that carries years behind it. In a world that rewards the loudest voice, he taught them something else. That real leadership doesn't shout. It stands, it listens, and sometimes it wears a hoodie. He never asked for an office, so they gave him the old staff lounge. It smelled like microwaved popcorn and cheap hand soap. The couch creaked. The mini fridge hummed like it was tired. But Darius didn't mind. He placed a single photo on the shelf, his mother standing in front of the mall in 1982, holding his hand. Back when she used to say, "We don't need to own everything, baby. Just enough to stand on our own name." Now he did. He didn't hold meetings with charts, didn't install buzzers or memos. Instead, he walked. Twice a day. Every corridor. He knew every first name within 2 weeks. Asked questions, not orders. "How's your sister doing? Did your boy get into that college? You ever think about running your own kiosk someday?" People didn't know how to respond at first. Some thought it was a test, but slowly, they understood. He wasn't managing a building. He was stewarding it. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible. So now he saw everybody, especially the ones no one else saw. One afternoon, he stopped by a kiosk where a young man was cleaning fingerprints off display glass. "Name's Marcus," the boy said, nervous. "I know," Darius nodded. "Your uncle did roofing work for my first house." Marcus smiled, surprised. "He still brags about that tile job?" Darius chuckled. "Tell him it still leaks." They both laughed, and in that moment, the mall felt like community. Not retail, not square footage, just people. He started a program 2 months in. Didn't call it an internship. Didn't brand it. He just put a flyer in the break room. "Want to learn how to run your own business? I'll teach you everything they never did. No fees, just time and effort. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Food's on me." 5 people showed up the first week. 17 by week 4. Even 2 assistant managers started sitting in the back. He didn't lecture. He told stories about vacuum repair, about loan rejections, about the time he got tricked out of a lease and had to sleep in his truck for a week. "You don't win by yelling louder," he told them. "You win by showing up one more time than they thought you would." That line stuck. Someone painted it on a back wall near the loading dock. Still there now. He never once mentioned the guards who tried to remove him. Didn't punish them. Didn't ask for apologies. One of them quit. The other stayed. And after 2 months, Darius saw him help a teenage boy find his lost backpack and then offer to walk him to the car. Progress, Darius thought. Quiet, but real. The mall started to change, not in structure, but in energy. People swept their storefronts without being told. Teens stopped tagging the elevators. Vendors shared lunch with each other. Not because of rules, but because of him. Because they saw what it looked like to carry power without needing to flex it. He once dreamed of owning the mall, but what he left behind was bigger than buildings. He wasn't building profit. He was building people. They still called it Ridgeview Mall. But after a while, people just started calling it Mr. Mallory's place. Not officially. Just in the way folks say things when it feels right. Teenagers said it when they met up near the arcade. Mothers said it when they dropped off their kids at the reading circle Darius sponsored. The night cleaners said it when they clocked in and saw fresh mops and working vending machines. Darius never needed his name on a sign, but somehow it was everywhere. He stayed for 5 more years, quiet, steady, present. Then one morning, he handed the property over to a nonprofit foundation he'd built in secret, run by former employees, staff from the business classes, and a few kids he once mentored who were now managers. He didn't throw a farewell party. He just left the keys on the counter of his lounge, tucked the photo of his mother back into his bag, and walked out the same door he once mopped behind. He didn't disappear. He just stepped back, let others rise. And when people asked where he went, someone always replied, probably teaching someone else how to own something they were told they didn't deserve. A small plaque still hangs by the west entrance. Not gold, not flashy, just etched in clean black steel. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. In honor of Darius Mallory. If you felt something from this story, drop a comment below. Not for the algorithm, but for the real ones like Darius, the quiet builders, the patient leaders, the ones who don't need applause to do what's right. Tag someone who carries dignity like a torch. Tell us what your legacy would look like if no one was watching. This is the kind of story we live to tell, where presence speaks louder than power. If you believe in honoring voices that don't always get the spotlight, consider subscribing to Black Voice Matter. Because sometimes, the most powerful revolutions start with one man, in a hoodie, refusing to leave.